Good evening. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Andy Clark, the Sportfish Program Manager for the state of Arizona. And tonight we'd like to provide a public forum and discussion about the draft environmental assessment currently available for review and comment on our website, azgfd.gov. If you go to that website, right on the top there's a banner, and you can click on that banner and it takes you right to the page where a link is there. Perfect. And you can click on that and go right to the document. So definitely want to encourage, if you haven't already taken a look at that, to do that at some point. But yeah, we wanted to provide this forum, a public forum, to talk about any questions or comments on that. But first, just a short introduction here. The draft environmental assessment is an analysis of the department's sportfish stocking program. The analysis has been done in concert with our partners at the Fish and Wildlife Service, specifically the Office of Federal Aid. Our partners at the Fish and Wildlife Service, who administer the wildlife and sportfish restoration programs in the Albuquerque office, are joining us tonight as well. So thank you for that. Also joining us are the aquatic wildlife program managers from our three southern regions. We've got Ty Hardiman from the Yuma region, Region 4. And joining us via Facebook, on Facebook, is Nate Berg. He's in our Region 5, our Tucson office. And Kurt Gill is in our Mesa office, the Region 6 office. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. They'll be on tap later after the short presentation to answer any questions and give you some firsthand feedback on the local, any local changes, local opportunities for stocking for the next 10 years. So we'd like to focus on these regions tonight. We did one of these last night for our northern regions, and I think that went pretty well. So I wanted to focus on these southern regions tonight and break it up that way. So we've got some slides for you or a presentation for you to review. So let's get started. Here's an overview of the proposed stocking program from 2021 to 2031. The Sportfish Stocking Program is supported with federal funds through the Federal Aid and Sportfish Restoration Program, along with state funds derived from the sales of fishing licenses and other state funding sources. The federal funding apportioned to Arizona is authorized under the Federal Aid and Sportfish Restoration Act of 1950, commonly known as the Dingell-Johnson Act. Also, an amendment passed in 1984 known as the Wallet-Burrow Act. These two acts provide federal aid to state wildlife agencies for management and restoration of sportfish. It's important to understand the definition of sportfish. In Arizona, we're a little unique in that our native species are typically not considered sportfish. We've got our native trout, and what we have a round-tailed chub as well. So our sportfish are not native typically. So it's important to later on we'll go into why that's important. The sportfish restoration funds are derived from a federal excise tax at the manufacturing level on certain items of sport fishing tackle, fishing equipment, and motorboat fuel. Recreational angling in Arizona creates a statewide economic impact of more than 1.2 billion annually. That was from a statewide angler survey in 2013. In 2020, the department sold over 400,000 fishing licenses. Since the early 1900s, the Arizona Game and Fish Department and other agencies have supplemented recreational angling opportunities by stocking state waters with sport fish species. There was some native fish species in those waters, but in those early days, we brought in species like carp, actually, bass, and trout. In 2020, the department stocked more than 558,000 pounds of fish for anglers to catch in 126 of Arizona's lakes, rivers, and streams. Stock fish include mostly rainbow, Apache and Gila, brown, and cutthroat trout. But some warm water species are stocked, such as largemouth bass, bluegill, and channel catfish as well. The majority of angler use is maintained through natural reproduction and recruitment of sportfish populations, and not by the stocking program. Fish stockings have evolved over the last 100 years, obviously to meet growing needs of the anglers in Arizona. Our population has continued to grow. We have to adapt and grow with it. The department considers a wide range of factors when determining where and when to stock fish, including biology, angler use, partnership commitments and needs, native fish impacts, and social demands. So to highlight, here's our mission. It's wordy, but essentially we conserve, enhance, and restore Arizona's diverse wildlife resources and habitats, and to provide wildlife resources and safe watercraft and off-highway vehicle recreation for the enjoyment, appreciation, and use by present and future generations. It's an important mission. The department must balance the needs of native species that are not pursued for sport by the recreating public with the public need for recreational opportunities. Remember, most of our sport fish species are not native. So the department recognizes that the ability to continue to provide sport fishing opportunities is closely tied to the need for continued conservation of native aquatic species. To balance those needs, the department continues to implement wildlife conservation actions for Endangered Species Act species and other special status species. These actions include statewide species monitoring, implementation of recovery and conservation projects, assistance to other organizations and individuals in wildlife conservation as well. So every 10 years, our partners with the Fish and Wildlife Service and the department evaluate the social, economic, and environmental effects of Arizona's stocking program. And pursuant to the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, we prepare a draft environmental analysis that analyzes possible actions or alternatives. The preferred alternative for the agencies, also known as the proposed action, would allow the department to continue its stocking program for the next 10 years. And it also includes conservation measures to reduce potential impacts on federally listed or sensitive native aquatic or semi-aquatic species. Now I'd like to go through the southern 3 regions of our state and highlight the stocking locations that we propose for stocking in the next 10 years. We'll start with Region 4, which has a regional office in Yuma, and essentially the lower Colorado River. It also includes the lower Gila as well. So this map sort of highlights the stocking locations that we would do, and so that we would stock. This comes right out of the fishing regulations. So if you've got access to the fishing regulations or our website, either one, you could pull this up and see the exact locations. But these slides are just meant to give you an idea. For rainbow trout, cold water fish stockings for Region 4, La Paz County Park, and Fortuna Pond. Warm water fish stockings for largemouth bass, channel catfish, rainbow trout, and bluegill, we're proposing Redondo Lake. For bluegill and channel catfish only, La Paz County Park and Fortuna Pond. The community fish program species assemblage typically is largemouth bass, channel catfish, rainbow trout, and bluegill, and those we proposed for Council Park Pond, Yuma West Wetlands Pond. And for the pack ponds, Pacific Avenue Athletic Park ponds, black crappie, red ear, and white amur for vegetation control and some bait fish. Keep in mind too, before we go to Region 5, that the majority of our sport fish populations are sustained through natural reproduction. So to go to the Tucson area, southeastern Arizona in Region 5, the cold water fish stocking areas for rainbow trout, Rose Canyon Lake, Parker Canyon Lake, Patagonia, Pina Blanca, Clough Ranch, Dankworth, Fry Mesa, Roper, and Riggs Flat. For brown trout, we propose to stock them in Rose Canyon, Riggs Flat, and Fry Mesa. And for the native trout, Gila Trout, Fry Mesa Reservoir. Most of these are existing now and not a lot of changes for the next 10 years. Keep stocking what we're stocking. For the warm water fish, largemouth bass in Aravaca Lake, Clough Ranch Ponds 1 and 2, or 1 and 3, excuse me, Dankworth Pond, and Roper Lake. Same places for red ear and bluegill, and Roper Lake for black crappie. Channel catfish are proposed for Clough, just upon number 3, Dankworth Pond, Roper, and Parker Canyon. For the community fish program waters, the standard species assemblage there, we've got Lakeside Lake, Kearney, Graham County Fairgrounds, Kennedy Lake, Sahuarita, and Silverbell. Some new opportunities in Region 5 are for brown and rainbow trout at Grant and Post Creeks. For our Region 6 waters, which are basically central Arizona, the little strip, that very lower part of the map on the Mogollon Rim, is actually in Region 6. So lakes around Canyon Creek, Tonto Creek, areas around Basin are actually in Region 6 as well. Some cold water fish stocking areas, Christopher Creek, rainbow trout for Christopher Creek, Tonto Creek, Hagler, Canyon, East Verde. Sticking with Saguaro Lake, Canyon Lake, and Apache as well. For brown trout, Horton Creek and Canyon Creek. Again, these are pretty standard creeks that we have now. For warm water fish stockings, largemouth bass, Horse Thief Basin Lake, Saguaro Lake, Canyon Lake, and Apache. Typically, those lakes would be self-sustaining also, but we have had substantial fish kills due to golden algae, so those lakes are included for possible stockings. Smallmouth bass at Saguaro Canyon and Apache, channel catfish at Saguaro Canyon and Apache, bluegill up at Horse Thief Basin Lake, which is by Crown King, black crappie in Saguaro Canyon and Apache, and walleye in Saguaro Canyon and Apache. A whole host of community fish program waters in and around the Phoenix metro area. There should be Green Valley Lake also, third column all the way down. That's around Basin. So lots of opportunities for folks to go catch largemouth bass, channel catfish, rainbow trout, bluegill, red ear, fathead minnows, and white aimer. Probably won't catch fathead minnows, but the bait fish in these community fish program waters. Again, in the fishing regulations and on our website, you can get more details on these waters. New opportunities in Region 6 for Gila trout. We've got the East Verde River, which we're already stocking and very successful with that. Many of you may have already caught a Gila trout out of the East Verde. Hagler Creek, Christopher Creek, Tonto, Ellison, Bonita, Workman, and Green Valley are all proposed for Gila trout stockings over the next 10 years. Largemouth bass in Bartlett Lake, Roosevelt, and Lake Pleasant. Bluegill in Bartlett, Roosevelt, and Pleasant. And red ear in Horse Thief Basin Lake, and possibly, if we can find them, for Lake Pleasant as well. Tiger muskie in Horse Thief Basin Lake, crappie and black crappie in Bartlett, Roosevelt, and Pleasant, and white crappie in Lake Pleasant. So that's our 3 southern Arizona lakes. Again, we're going through this analysis period. There is the draft environmental assessment on our website, and it's available for public comment. We encourage people to go find that on our website. And if you do have comments, you can submit them through email at the email on the screen there. You can also mail them to the department. Attention Dave Weedman at 5000 West Carefree Highway. The address is there, and it must be postmarked no later than June 11th of 2021. So that concludes our presentation. Just wanted to say a couple of things. We've got some questions coming in, and I'd encourage you to keep those coming. Keep in mind, this is not really a laundry list, but it is a list that helps us decide where we can stock. Doesn't necessarily mean we will stock. So we got a question about Kearney Lake. We haven't stocked in Kearney Lake because the connectivity is so high and the golden algae is there. So that lake does frequently kill. But we did include that in this analysis and in our proposed action because that could change. And so we put that in there as a possibility. So when you see some of these species in many of these waters, it is an option for us. And we went ahead and did the analysis on that with our partners with the Fish and Wildlife Service, just in case funding allows, or we can get some of these species from fish vendors that will be able to have the environmental clearances to go ahead and stock. But there's some other hurdles to get over every year before we can actually put these species in these waters. This just clears the way. So hopefully that helps a little bit. So I can ask Ty or Kurt if they want to jump in. Ty, if you have, now that you've seen some of those and some of the questions, is there anything you want to add or comment?
Yeah, so one thing that I think would be good to point out would be bringing up Redondo, and that's that we have some plans for that lake in the future. It is no longer going to be a part of the community fishing program, but pulling it from the program allows us to do some different things with it and provide some unique opportunities that wouldn't be available to anglers with the lake being in that program. One thing that we're considering doing with that lake is potentially turning it into a crappie fishery in the Southwest. So it would provide anglers with an opportunity to go to a lake and specifically target crappie fishing, which we currently don't have something like that out here where you can specifically do that other than driving several hours up to Alamo. So that would be one thing in particular that we're looking about doing down here in the Southwest.
All right. So Kurt, do you have anything to add from the Region 6, the big Salt River chain of lakes or Lake Pleasant, or anything to add in there?
Yeah, I can just address a little bit about, we had some of the new opportunities in there, and some of those were bass and crappie stockings at Bartlett and Roosevelt Lake. That actually has already started occurring. We did not have approval for that under our last stocking consultation, but we did kind of a mid-cycle amendment to our consultation, did an internal environmental assessment checklist. And so we have been stocking black crappie and largemouth bass in both Roosevelt and Bartlett lakes already, but we added Lake Pleasant to that mix as well in case we have any issues at Lake Pleasant, like we've seen at some of our other lakes where we've had declines in the fish populations. We wanted to stock fish just to help boost catch rates, boost the population until it could turn to a population level that we've seen historically, over time, where anglers are happy with catch rates and things like that. In addition, you probably noticed all of the additions of Gila trout along many of the streams below the Mogollon Rim, east of Basin. Like it was mentioned in the presentation, we have started stocking Gila trout in the East Verde River. We've had really good response to that. Fish are returning to creel just as well as rainbows. So we plan in the future, if we can get production geared up in our hatcheries, that we'd like to start stocking a lot of those other streams along the Mogollon Rim with Gila trout in lieu of rainbow trout in the future. Other than that, I didn't really see a lot of questions for Region 6, so that's about all I have.
Great. Thanks, Kurt. Yeah, I had a question about Aravaca Lake. Looked like Michael Gieb asked about what about Aravaca Lake. Aravaca was listed in that Region 5 slide. Part of the stocking proposal is for largemouth bass and bluegill, and probably some red ear sunfish without looking at it. I don't have it memorized. If Nate's on Facebook, if he would just respond to that right on Facebook, or if he's got us on our little chat window we got going here too. But at any rate, that I'm not sure what you mean by what about it. It is included on there, and just in case we do need to restock it. Interesting thing about Aravaca and Pina Blanca down there is they tend to have a tendency to, those populations of bass, they get too many of them. It's catch and release is so popular, and with the Mercury advisories, not so many people want to keep bass from those lakes, and so it can fluctuate so wildly. Like this year, water is so low. There are a lot of fish in those two lakes for sure, and so we haven't had a need to restock it. But if it completely kills because of drying or drought, that may be something we want to pursue. So hopefully, Michael, that answers your question. Crappie in the urban lakes. We've tried crappie in Alivord. We tried some in Riverview. I want to say there's 2 or 3 other lakes we tried to do crappie in, and they show up occasionally, but they haven't taken off like we hope they would. Crappie are kind of funny with small waters. They tend to stunt. In other words, they get to a certain size and then they don't really grow, and they just get older and older and older, and they just don't get past, say, 8 to 10, 11 inches. So you may have 3 or 4-year-old crappie doing all the spawning, and they just don't do as well. Where there's lots of bait fish and they have good structure and depth, that's when they tend to do pretty well. So our community fish program lakes, there's only a few that were deep enough and were candidates. We did try some, and that's something that we'll continue to evaluate over time.
Hey, Andy, Nate messaged me and he asked me to jump in real quick.
Okay, great.
He said he's referencing Aravaca Lake. He says it will only be stocked if there's a fish kill. It's currently self-sustaining with largemouth bass, bluegill, and red ear, and they do not plan on stocking channel catfish in there at this time.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Thanks for that. Yeah. What else do we have here? Are you going to stock bass in the urbans? Yes, we typically stock largemouth bass in many, if not most, if not all the urban ponds, the community fish program waters. Again, the bass are extremely expensive for what we get. So we try to spread those out, and there may be a few waters this year that we don't stock as much because the bass are actually doing quite well. So yes, we have plans to stock largemouth bass in the community fish program waters ongoing. Let's see, what else have we got here? And Tempe Town, did we try crappie in Tempe Town? Was that Kurt? You want to address that?
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. We did try crappie in Tempe Town. Like you mentioned, some of the other ones, we saw similar results to the other lakes where they didn't really sustain or produce a viable population of catchable size fish. And so that program has just been discontinued there for now as well.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that, Kurt. Let's see, what else do we got here? Thanks everybody for your comments and questions. They're great. Is the stocking for urban small bass? Yeah, they typically go in at 5 to 8 inches. Every once in a great while, we get a really good deal from our fish vendor, and they go in. We can get some that are a little bit bigger, but yeah, they're typically what we call subcatchables or fingerlings. They're advanced fingerlings. That's the best value for what we have to spend. So, but like I say, they've been doing quite well, and people have been catching them, so there's some survival. They're not just getting cleaned out. So typically those stockings are in the springtime, early summer, and so yeah, it's usually March if I remember correctly. If anybody else remembers better, jump in there. But I think I think they're usually in March or April. I don't know if we could go to the well, it's a little different region 4, but we can talk about too what the effects of the drought is. We've got different maybe projections, predictions for this year in drought or in your waters. And Kurt, we can start with you if you don't mind.
Yeah, I can tell you that one place we're seeing some issues already because of drought is the East Verde River. We typically increase our stocking numbers this time of year, but due to the fact that C.C. Cragen Reservoir did not fill this winter, SRP was not releasing water down the East Verde River. So there's sections of the East Verde River that are currently dry. And so that it reduced the area where we could stock. So therefore it reduced the number of fish that were going into the water at this time. But I heard as of yesterday that they started releasing water down the East Verde. So hopefully we can return to normal stocking rates on the East Verde here in the next week or two. Other than that, we're also seeing some pretty, going to see at least some pretty big declines in Roosevelt Lake, especially this winter. We've already seen that Bartlett Lake has dropped quite significantly from not getting any winter precipitation this year. And so that at Bartlett Lake, we installed a bunch of artificial habitat out there a couple of years ago, and as well as Christmas trees. So that habitat is probably now close to being out of the water. Whereas at Roosevelt Lake, we put a bunch of habitat in there over about a 3-year period. With the last 2 winters, with Roosevelt being full, much of that habitat got covered. But looking at SRP predictions for how much that lake will drop this summer, Roosevelt Lake habitat will likely be fishable by the end of summer again this year. Other than that, we had some golden algae related fish kills at some of our lower Salt River chain lakes, Apache Canyon and Saguaro. We saw some declines in the populations there, but we did do surveys there this spring and noted that at both Canyon and Saguaro Lake, the numbers are back up, and we're actually meeting our objectives there currently for a hog bass water at both of those reservoirs. So bass numbers are looking really good there. Size is looking really good. So there should be really good fishing at those 2 lakes this year.
Great, thanks. Yeah, Ty, do you have any concerns about drought in your country?
Water? What's that?
Yeah.
Nothing that I don't think we typically deal with more regularly anyway, out this way. Water levels don't fluctuate a whole lot in most of these waters. Most of our waters are controlled by, either the Army Corps or other federal agencies. So we get a pretty steady stream of water in and out from the river system. Inflows, if we have years where we have less inflows than normal, it can affect, shad populations in a lot of the systems. Like Alamo, for example, we've noticed in data, analyzing data that years where we have less inflow into that system, we have fewer shad, and the bass just don't seem to be as big the following years, or those cohorts tend to not be as big. So that's something to potentially keep an eye out for. If we're not getting as much rain, or snow melt. So.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and back to Region 5, definitely have concerns over Aravaca. There was another question in there about, do we have concerns about Aravaca? Absolutely, it's definitely that one and Pina Blanca, and most of those waters in southern Arizona are pretty low. The good thing about southern Arizona, though, is monsoonal rains can help. Most of the middle Arizona, northern Arizona waters, and over in the White Mountains, the monsoons do little to increase lake levels. They may hold their own, which is good. But in southern Arizona, that actually could help. And so up on top of Mount Lemmon at Riggs Flat, and then at Rose Canyon, sorry, and then on top of Mount Graham at Riggs Flat, those can get some pretty good flows with monsoons, as well as those southeastern Arizona, Aravaca and Pina Blanca. So there's hope. The projections are for a pretty decent monsoon season. We're due. We haven't had one in quite a few years, and so hopefully that pans out. But we're definitely concerned and definitely continue to monitor. That's one good reason why we kept that stocking of bass on the proposed action, even though, like Nate alluded to, that we really don't have any plans to do that. But if it completely kills, we will restock that. So there's not a lot we can do with water levels other than do our rain dance and hope that some of these small watersheds that feed these lakes catch enough during monsoons, and maybe we get an early winter. But all indications point to pretty dry conditions. So we'll just monitor and do what we can do.
Nate wanted me to add on to that, Andy, and that was to say that basically the ramp at Aravaca Lake, due to the low water levels, is pretty much unusable.
Okay. Gotcha.
So it's hard to get boats to. Pretty much boats can't launch there, but it is still available for shorefish, and people are still able to launch at Riggs Flat currently. So
great. Thanks for that. So we've got a question from Nick. Get back to stocking walleyes. Kurt, you want to address that?
Yeah, I can address that. You may or may not be aware, but fingerling walleye are extremely expensive. Andy was talking about how bass are expensive, but fingerling walleyes are just extremely expensive. So they're cost prohibitive to stock those. So we had been opportunistically stocking sack fry that we've gotten from other states over the years. In the past, we've gotten them from Colorado. We've flown to Kansas and picked up walleye there. We were getting them from Utah for a couple of years. But unfortunately, for the last 4 or 5 years now, we just haven't had a source for walleye. We have been trying to find a new source for walleye, but it's just, most states have kind of either been using the production for their own self, or with Utah, where they had an issue where they had some aquatic invasive species show up in their hatchery, so we couldn't take the fish then. So we're still searching for a new source for walleye for Apache Lake, especially in Canyon and Saguaro lakes, if we can find them. But that's our issue right now, is finding a source for the fish.
Also, while I got you, I know I've gotten some questions about horse thief Basin Lake, and that showed up on the presentation a few times. The tiger muskie and horse thief. Maybe talk about what some possible future plans for that lake could be.
Yeah, that was another one where we had an opportunity to get some tiger muskie. I believe those came from Utah as well. And so what we had at Horse Thief Basin Lake is we had it currently has red ear sunfish and largemouth bass in it, but both those populations were stunted. It was tough to find a bass over about 10 inches in Horse Thief Basin Lake, but there were a ton of them in there. So we stocked the tiger muskie in there in hopes that the fish would then, utilize some of those smaller bass and make the bass population and red ear sunfish populations healthy. To date, we don't really know how that stocking, how effective that's been. We went out and we did a sampling effort. We didn't pick up any of the tiger muskie. And so we plan to go out there again this year to try to see what they look like. But I just found out recently that the Forest Service has plans to dredge Horse Thief Basin Lake, so they'll be draining it to do that. So we'll have to look in the future whether, when we restock Horse Thief Basin Lake after it's drained, whether we want to potentially put tiger muskie in there or not, or whether we'll just go with bass and bluegill and potentially red ear.
Right. Thanks, Nate, or thanks, Kurt. Yeah, that could be a very good thing for Horse Thief Basin. It's needed uh, dredging for quite a few years. It's got so much aquatic vegetation, like you said, and it's so difficult to fish it. So that's going to be good if the Forest Service can, and we'll partner with them to do that, of course, and help however we can. But I think that'll be a good thing long term. But yeah, we'll have to figure out where to get some more tiger muskie if that, or if even that's appropriate. So, all right. Any other questions coming in? Don't see much. Again, want to encourage you to go to azgft.gov and go to the banner and take a look at that draft environmental assessment for our continued sportfish stocking for the state. Again, we're doing that in concert with our partners at the Fish and Wildlife Service. And you can provide, if you have comments, questions, concerns, there's the email address there on that page, as well as a mailing address. And those are the two venues currently that you can use to get those comments to us. We share those with the Fish and Wildlife Service. Let's see what else we've got. Question on Parker Canyon.
I have a response from Nate regarding
Okay.
Parker Canyon.
Okay, great.
So there are no plans for stocking smallies or crappie into Parker Canyon. We have to concern ourselves with tiger salamanders and Gila top minnow. Both of those species prey upon those species. So that was Nate's response to that particular question.
Gotcha. I have a question about Region 1 from Aaron. Are cutthroat trout going to be stocked in Luna or Big Lake anytime soon? And don't have Ryan. He was with us last night. I'll take a shot at that. I know we've got concerns with cutthroat trout in many of our regions, many of our lakes. Big Lake is slated to do that, to get those at some point. Again, we're bringing those in from another state or a vendor. So we're looking into that and the viability of that. But we would like to pursue or keep stocking cutthroat trout where it makes sense. And, so let's see, that's what I'm missing here. All right. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in. If there's no other questions, we can. If there's any other things you guys can add, Kurt or Ty or even Nate, sure have our time to talk. All right, got a question from Ron. Forestry doesn't answer questions, so is there any improvements going to Parker Canyon to improve fishing, like a beach for swimmers or a less steep boat ramp? I do know that we've been in conversations with the Forest Service on that launch ramp to improve that, and currently undergoing the environmental assessment planning to try to improve that. Again, it's a way longer process than we'd like, but it's one that's necessary. So there are plans in motion to improve that. I don't know about any swim beach or anything like that. So I don't know if Nate's tuning in. He can help us out with that too. Got a question from Janie. Too many tournaments at Patagonia. When can you stock bass or stop the tournaments during the spawn? can't speak directly to that. The department doesn't regulate tournaments. We've had conversations about maybe getting back into that, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So the Forest Service or the land management agencies regulates tournaments on the waters in Arizona. So, from fish surveys that I've seen for fish survey reports, the bass population at Patagonia is quite healthy. So that's something that maybe Nate down there we can work with those tournaments if there's a conflict and address, what your specific concerns are, or help you to find those fish. That's probably would help you the most.
Nate is commenting to that. He said that his survey data shows a large population of bass in Patagonia. So I would recommend maybe just getting in touch with Nate Berg at his office and maybe sitting down with him and discussing that electrofishing data.
Yeah, he's at the Tucson regional office. So there's call their main number there. It's on the fishing regulations or on our website there. You can get that phone number. And yeah, he'd be more than happy to talk to you about that, I'm sure. But yeah, it's a common concern or misconception, depending on your viewpoint. We have seen a lot more participation in tournaments the last few years. It's something that's really popular right now, and in some cases, it's a good thing, and others, it's not. It's depending on the number of boats on a small lake. Yeah, that can be challenging for others that aren't on it. So most tournament directors that I talk to are pretty conscious about that, and they're eager to do whatever they can do to minimize that. But there's always bad apples as well. So, but that's something we can definitely talk to the Forest Service about. If there's too many boats, your perception of too many boats and what that looks like. So, Patagonia is certainly not a huge lake, but it's pretty good size too. So, thank you for the Tucson office number there. All right, David Castro, looks like Newark, Arizona. Is there a limit anywhere for crawfish, or can one harvest all one can get statewide? Yeah, there's no limit on crayfish, David. There's some specific dimensions on crayfish traps in our fishing regulations, sizes for that. There's no limit. The only kind of stipulation we have with crayfish is can't transport them alive. So if you're trying to gather as many as you can for a dinner or a feast or whatever, a crab boil. I've had a crab boil with crawfish before, pretty darn good. And just transport them on ice. Don't put them in water. They should be transported dead. So there's some exceptions in southeast or southwestern Arizona down in Ty's country for moving live crayfish for bait. But the majority of Arizona, you can't move live crayfish. So if you're collecting them, put them on ice or kill them. Either way, that ensures that they don't get places that we don't want them. All right, hopefully I got that one done.
There's a comment in the question or in the stuff about Patagonia. And Nate wanted me to point out that once the water levels go back up in Patagonia, the vegetation will be submerged again, and the fishing should be a little bit better.
But yeah, each of you guys talked about drought in your region. That's definitely one that in that Tucson region is a bugger, as that aquatic vegetation makes it really difficult to get into fish. So. Urban lakes need to be policed more because so many people take over the limits, and how to control this. Yeah, thank you for that comment. We work with our officers every day to do just that. So I'll pass that comment along to our law enforcement folks, and I think they do a pretty good job of getting out and patrolling. There is a thought though that lots of people are taking over their limits. So that's something that we need to look closer at. So appreciate your comment. Mr. Porter. Had talked with Mike before. Good to see you. What's the plan for Aravaca, and if it dries up, let's see, folks gonna save the fish? Yeah, so Mike, we did talk a little bit earlier about Aravaca already. We've got Nate tuning in. No plans to do anything with Aravaca other than monitor it. If it does completely kill, we will do everything in our power to get bass and bluegill and some ritter back into that lake when it fills up again. So, but at this point, we're just trying to monitor, and the boat launch is out of the water, as you probably already know. So, anything to add on that? I'll let Ty via Nate, or Nate via Ty.
He hasn't currently added anything on yet, so if he says something, I'll chime in.
Right. Thank you.
He did make a comment about Patagonia again. It says the shore fishing spots are definitely limited, and we certainly know a need exists to provide more shoreline opportunities. And if we can, we would like to install additional fishing piers in the future.
All right, from Jamie, looks like, so basically let them die and restock later. Yeah, because they're high contamination of mercury, or high levels of mercury in their flesh, we have very little options to no options to move those fish. So there's really not much we can do. I know it's unfortunate, sad, but yeah, there's really no place we can move fish from any of those lakes down there. We really don't move fish at all, and a lot of it has to do with the sport fish consultation that we're talking about this evening. Just not something we want to move fish from other basins to other places with concerns of disease and contamination and what they're going to do to those environments that we put them in. So yeah, unfortunately, we have to just kind of sit tight on that. Yeah, we tried to do Mercury Remediation, or ADWQ, or ADEQ, I'm sorry, and the Forest Service at Pina Blanca. That lake got dredged. I don't know, it's been 10, 12 years ago now. And to try to remove mercury from the system. Now it's filled up again, and from the testing, those fish still have elevated levels of mercury. So not sure we've seen many ways to mitigate for high levels of mercury. Unfortunately, with the high productivity that we see, especially down there in those lakes, that really facilitates, that bacteria facilitates the methylization, the attachment of a methyl group on elemental mercury, and that's absorbed through the invertebrates, small bait fish, all the way up, and is magnified as you go up. So there's not a lot we can do. We've looked at point source, mines, and tried to determine if that contamination was coming from point sources, and haven't had any luck doing that, cleaning those up. So anybody wants to add to that, please do. Absolutely. Amen. Come on, rain. Well, again, we thank everybody for showing up and talking with us. If there's any other things, questions, concerns, please, we'll stay on for a little bit longer. Mike, what can we do as anglers? We'll pull up, there it is. Can do as anglers to get game and fish, make the Urbans Lake catch and release only. Yeah, that's something we can talk about. In the past, all the community fish program waters, as a condition of stocking them, they've been pretty much what we call put and take, or intensive use lakes. We have tried some catch and release. We've got a water ranch right now in Gilbert, and I think there's some open mindedness to try and some catch and release in other places. Down in Mike's country at Kennedy keeps pumping out the really big hog bass, big fish at 8 to 10, 12 pound range. And most people are, for the most part, releasing those, turning those back. So I think the culture of catch and release, at least for bass, is there. For the catfish and the trout, people want to go harvest those. But we're certainly open to trying new management schemes where it makes sense. Thanks, Mike, for that question.
I'd also jump in too, Andy. I mean, in some regions too, catch and release may not be what is needed. We've noticed in a lot of our data that we've looked at. I'll use Mitri as a prime example. We see fish, large bass in there that are very low weight, very stressed out. And there could be a lot of things that explain that, but one thing that explains it would be a lot of competition. So there are going to be some instances where we need people to keep some fish. Some of these systems are small. They're not really designed to have a ton of large bass in there. So what happens? You get a bunch of bass that are starving because there's not enough bait in there to feed that many bass in that age group. So sometimes catch and release is what's needed. Sometimes we need people keeping more fish. Just wanted to add that in there too.
Well, that's a really good point, Ty. Thank you for that. See, we've got a comment.
I have a response from Nate here for Parker Canyon, the dam leak. Nate says that it's a small leak. The engineer inspects that dam yearly, and there are currently no plans to work on it in the near future. It's a small amount of water passing through it. And Nate is also responding to the question asked earlier by Mr. Ben Trujillo. Although we would love it, we currently have no prospects of a new lake in Tucson.
Prospects of a new lake in Tucson. Yeah, we had trying to remember what the new pond. There is an existing pond in Tucson that we were looking at and working with the city of Tucson to Reed Park, I think is what that was. So we entered into some discussions with Reed Park and city of Tucson Parks and Recreation, and it came back they had some significant issues with that one. So we've got some ex-commissioners working down there too, looking for new places to build ponds in the Tucson area. We acknowledge there's not a lot of opportunity in Tucson, and especially a year like this, that's going to be really difficult. But new communities and new developments do it all the time. So I think that's our best hope, is to partner with a new development that may be going in somewhere down in southeast Arizona around that Tucson area, whether it's Marana or that area, and try to get a new fishing opportunity in that. So we're definitely pursuing those and actively looking for that. So some question about why do we rely on volunteers to clean the urban lakes? Well, please understand the urban lake, we enter into agreements, cooperative agreements or intergovernmental agreements actually with the cities that have these lakes. And basically the department's role is to get the fish and stock the fish. Pretty much everything else is up to the cities. All the operation and maintenance of those ponds fall on the backs of the cities. There's some exceptions, but very few. So when volunteers are used, it's in a group. It's for the good of the group. The cities will contact volunteers. The department can contact volunteers, as well as volunteers just come forward this is my backyard pond. I'd like to keep it clean. So yes, we are still in a hiring freeze with the state of Arizona. So the department cannot add employees pretty much at all. I mean, there's some ways here and there, but it's pretty tough to add on employees. So we're not growing employee wise. So yeah, we rely heavily on volunteers to do many things for wildlife in Arizona. So let's see, what else have we got here? Yeah, more Tucson is often forgotten about. Phoenix, yeah, I know folks down in Tucson feel like they're forgotten about. They're certainly not. We do everything we can to promote opportunities in Tucson, and it's just not there. So I would encourage people in Tucson to lobby their state representatives, their local folks. You're your best advocate on that. The department will work hand in hand with communities to create new fisheries, and we're actively looking, like I've said before, for new places to put fish and to manage fisheries. So many folks in that area want to pursue threatened and endangered fish, and we've worked really well with folks to do that as well. So again, as we talked about in the presentation, there's got to be a balance there. And so I regret folks down there. I talk to folks all the time in Tucson that feel neglected. I assure you, we're doing everything we can to help, at least from my perspective. I understand there's others. Okay. All right. Some other questions? Our questions are starting to go towards the camping facilities and some other topics. So those things we can certainly talk about. If there's any other questions on our stocking actions and how we can, well, I know you're asking us to make that better. We do everything we can to do just that. So can the San Pedro be fished? Not sure there's any opportunities in the San Pedro, or if there's even any sport fish in the San Pedro. It's pretty limited. If Nate's listening, maybe he can chime in, or if there's somebody else here that could help with the San Pedro. So certainly some good ideas, and I know folks don't think they're getting listened to, so I would encourage you to continue to actively talk to your representatives, and I know you're saying they're not outdoors people. Again, we've got 2 ex-commissioners that are working on those kinds of things down there too, to hopefully convince some folks that fishing is important. So again, we're listening. Try our best to get as many bass stockings and other stockings down there as we possibly can.
I
Right,
just
wanna thank
I just posted Nate's contact info in the Facebook chat.
Okay.
He's more than willing to have discussions with people about any of the waters in the Tucson area. Just give him a call or shoot him an email.
Mhm. Great. Appreciate that. Thanks, Ty. Thank you, Nate. Well, I definitely want to thank our partners at the Fish and Wildlife Service and the folks that are helping all of us out tonight behind the scenes. Thanks so much. Try to get out in front of the public and answer questions and talk about these things as much as we can. So we appreciate the participation. There's nothing else. I think we'll wrap this up. And again, go to our website and check out that draft environmental assessment. Email comments to that email address you can find there, or mail the comments to our Carefree office, and we'll be sure and get those down. So. All right. Well, thank you, Ty, and thank you, Kurt, Nate, and the Flagstaff Hotel Room. Appreciate you tuning in. Again, thanks for everybody behind the scenes. And we'll look forward to seeing you out on the water, catching fish. Thanks again. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.